Hello there. This is Heirs to the Kingdom channel, and in today's lesson we are doing Isaiah chapter 17 through 19. 18's a very short little chapter. Each one of these are separate prophecies from Isaiah. And the first one is titled A Proclamation Against Syria and Israel. But before we start this, if you are new to this channel and just clicked on it, I do recommend going to Genesis chapter 1 on my channel. If you don't know the Bible all that well and getting caught up, there's a lot that we've already went through, and there's words going to be used that I've already explained the meaning of quite a few times. So I kind of skip over giving definitions for them anymore. I do read from the KJV Bible. I prefer that one. I know God blesses that version. The people that built America followed the KJV Bible, and God blessed the building of America. So I know God approves of it. So we'll go ahead and get started here. So we've got 3 chapters to go through. And I said a pretty straightforward reading, just like last night's. I decided to go ahead and just do 3 chapters because the first 2 are quite short. And I do want the lesson to take a little bit longer than just about 15 minutes or so. So let's go ahead and get started here. Chapter 17, verse 1. This is, remember again, a proclamation against Syria and Israel. The burden of Damascus. Behold, Damascus is taken away from being a city, and it shall be a ruinous heap. The cities of error are forsaken, they shall be for flocks, which shall lie down, and none shall make them afraid. Now, these prophecies are going to be against these lands that have come against Israel multiple times. And I don't know exactly which era that these prophecies are partaking in. Is this, going to be before the rapture, before Jesus' second return? And I never really studied much to see if these things have already happened, and this is before Israel was made a nation again, or if it happened during the time of Israel being made a nation again. So you had the time period after Jesus and Israel was dispersed, when Jesus walked the earth in human form, and Israel was scattered to all corners of the earth. That we've already crossed over into in the prophecies here. So I don't know if this happened shortly after that, or if this happened at the time of World War II. Whenever the Nazis, they had control all the way down to Africa. So they already went through the land of Israel and everything else, through Egypt. The Nazis took over quite a bit, and it was the American forces that met up with them. They first went to Africa and pushed them north, pushing them back to Germany. And so we do know this, this stuff could have happened at the time during World War II. I didn't really research too much to know about, if these things have already come to pass or not. But let's continue on here. Verse 3. The fortress also shall cease from Ephraim, and the kingdom of Damascus, and the remnant of Syria. They shall be as the glory of the children of Israel, saith the Lord of hosts. And in that day it shall come to pass that the glory of Jacob shall be made thin, and the fatness of his flesh shall wax lean. So this is also a time the Israelites were. It's probably going to be during that time, before, during World War II, or shortly after Christ was crucified, because many Jews they were dispersed. They lost their land and stuff after Christ's crucifixion. But also during World War II, we know, was it possibly over 7 million, 7 million during the Holocaust with Germany alone. Not to mention Italy was doing the same thing because they were sided with the Nazis. And Russia as well. But multiple times throughout history, before Israel became a nation within a day again, the Jews were attacked, discriminated against. In every nation, in every land, even in America, people have been racist towards Jews. I don't really understand it or know why, but it happens nonetheless. Let's continue on here, verse 5. And it shall be as when the harvestman gathereth the corn and reapeth the ears with his arm, and it shall be as he that gathereth ears in the valley of Rephaim. Yet gleaning grapes shall be left in it, as the shaking of an olive tree, 2 or 3 berries in the top of the uppermost bough, 4 or 5 in the outmost fruitful branches thereof, saith the Lord God of Israel. These are describing the amount of people that's going to be left from these nations and from the Israelites and stuff. They still to this day shake the olive tree to get olives out of them. They have a machine that does it, that's on the front of them, of a tractor type equipment. Their whole purpose is to get the olives and stuff out. But saying if all that falls, only a few is going to be left, and that's the remnants of the people. Like I've always said, you don't want to be on the wrong side of God's wrath. You will regret it greatly. Verse 7. At that day shall a man look to his Maker, and his eyes shall have respect to the Holy One of Israel. And he shall not look to the altars, the work of his hands, neither shall respect that which his fingers have made, either the groves or the images. So we have that today in America, where everybody's, they're worshiping the work of their own hands. And of course, everyone's going to turn back to God in these times. Well, especially the Israelites. Let's continue on, verse 9. In that day shall his strong cities be a forsaken bough, and an uppermost branch, which they left because of the children of Israel. And there shall be desolation, because thou hast forgotten the God of thy salvation, and hast not been mindful of the rock of thy strength. Therefore shalt thou plant pleasant plants, and shall set it with strange slips. So I was talking about Israel losing their nation, and they will reproduce, but in strange lands. They will not be in their own land. They've lost their land. So this is more likely talking about after Christ, because they were no, with Babylon they still stayed Israel. So this is more likely talking about the after the crucifixion of Christ, where Christ already also prophesied that, the same thing Israel was going to happen to Israel after his time there. But let's continue on. Verse 11. In the day shalt thou make thy plant to grow, and in the morning shalt thou make thy seed to flourish. But the harvest shall be a heap in the day of grief and of desperate sorrow. As I've said before, the Israelites, the Jews throughout all nations, have been discriminated against. Every place that they had to dwell in, because they had to flee their own land, they were persecuted constantly. Hated for just who they are. Verse 12. Woe to the multitude of many people which make a noise like the noise of the seas, and to the rushing of nations that make a rushing like the rushing of mighty waters. The nation shall rush like the rushing of many waters, but God shall rebuke them, and they shall flee far off, and shall be chased as the chaff of the mountains before the wind, and like a rolling thing before the whirlwind. So this stuff I was talking about before, like whenever they used to beat the wheat and the chaff would come off of the seed, they would do it on mountaintops so the wind would blow away the useless stuff, and the good stuff they wanted to keep stayed on these little things that they had they would beat the wheat on, so the wheat would stay there. It's kind of like a giant dish, but I think it was woven out of some type of plant material, like how you weave a basket. It was something of that nature. It was like a big thing, had a slight dip to it, and they would beat the wheat there, and the wind would blow the chaff away, the wheat would stay. Then they could pick it up and put it in bags. They could pour it into bags from there. But let's continue on. See, God always talks about how he gets rid of the useless in that way, and then it's normally Old and New Testament talks about, the beating of the wheat and the chaff being blown away. That's what God considers people that don't serve him. They're useless. They're going to be scattered. They're not going to be any more. If it wasn't for the seed of the good people, the useless wouldn't even exist. They have no purpose. And God's going to get the useless off the back of the godly, one day, so that the godly can be at peace. But let's continue on 14. And behold, at evening tide, trouble, and before the morning he is not. This is the portion of them that spoil us, and the lot of them that rob us. So, of course, it's talking about that chaff stuff being the people that spoil and rob. But let's continue on. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that was the end of... Let me make sure I didn't double click here. Okay, yeah. So there's only 14 verses there. I think 18's even shorter. I think 18's only got like 7. Yeah, it's only about 7 verses here. Then we go into 19. But I said it's pretty straightforward reading. The title of 18 is the proclamation against Ethiopia. So, or, prophecy against Ethiopia. Proclamation, prophecy. I don't know why they titled it proclamations instead of just prophecies. Isaiah is a prophet. It would be a prophecy. I don't know. So many things I researched from and everything else. They word things weird. That's why I normally stick with the King James. Because here it's like you read from one to the other. It's like you didn't really understand it. There was a separation until you start reading it more. Now I will say in my Bible they do title it. My actual paper Bible they title it. And even my YouVersion app titles it as well. It's just in this particular DVD Bible, they do not put titles between things that are separated. But nonetheless, let's continue on. Chapter 18, verse 1. Woe to the land shadowing with wings, which is beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, that sendeth ambassadors by the sea, even in vessels of bulrushes upon the waters, saying, Go, ye swift messengers, to a nation scattered and peeled, to a people terrible from their beginning hitherto, a nation meted out and trodden down, whose land the rivers have spoiled. All ye inhabitants of the world and dwellers on the earth, see ye, when he lifted up an ensign on the mountains, and when he bloweth a trumpet, hear ye. Now remember, that ensign is something like a banner. Verse 4. For so the Lord said unto me, I will take my rest, and I will consider in my dwelling place like a clear heat upon herbs, and like a cloud of dew in the heat of harvest. For ahore the harvest, when the bud is perfect, and the sour grape is ripening in the flower, he shall both cut off the springs with pruning hooks, and take away and cut down the branches. They shall be left together unto the fowls of the mountains, and to the beasts of the earth. And the fowls shall summer upon them, and all the beasts of the earth shall winter upon them. In that time shall the present be brought unto the Lord of hosts of a people scattered and peeled, and from a people terrible from their beginning hitherto, a nation meted out and trodden down, and trodden underfoot, whose land the rivers have spoiled, to the place of the name of the Lord of hosts, the Mount Zion. Now, of course, throughout my life, Ethiopia has been a barren wasteland. I do know at some point in time in past history, it was a flourishing land. Moses lived there. He was married to an Ethiopian woman. So the land has been under a curse. For how long, I don't know. But more than likely it started happening after Christ's crucifixion. It's all these lands probably worked together with the Roman Empire at the time. And we'll also remember God made Israel a barren wasteland. So all this land used to get water, and then they didn't. And so all the areas had to be punished. Why? Don't really know. I do know that if the lands would have came together and worked together, they could have defeated the Roman soldiers quite easily. But it was the Romans who crucified Christ at the begging call of the Israelites, who were bloodthirsty at the time. So the one governor says, I wash my hands of this. This is on your head. And God does not work that way. You can't, because they still did it. The Romans still crucified Christ, and they knew he was innocent. So they're still guilty of not just murdering an innocent man, they murdered the Son of God. And so they were punished for that as well. But it said, the Israelites wanted it to happen. They asked for it to happen, and they obliged. So this is why we know that God says you're guilty of every sin you do, support, and help create. But let's continue on here. Oh, sorry. That was the end of 18. Now let's go on to 19. And of course, 19 we already tell there. This is the proclamation against Egypt, the prophecy against Egypt. Let's go ahead and get started here because this is the bigger chapter. And we're already at 20 minutes. I've stopped and explained a few areas already, and it does take time to do that. But I think there's 25. Yeah, there's 25 verses in this. So go ahead and just read it straight through because it's after reading the others, they're pretty self-explanatory. Chapter 19, verse 1. The burden of Egypt. Behold, the Lord rideth upon a swift cloud, and shall come into Egypt, and the idols of Egypt shall be moved at his presence, and the heart of Egypt shall melt in the midst of it. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight every one against his brother, and every one against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom. Now, see, that same stuff is kind of happening in America today because we're walking away from the Lord. So now we got states against states. We got political party against political party. We got liberals against conservatives. Take your pick. There's been death from these. Destruction, mayhem, and division. And trust me, it can get a whole lot worse if we don't start praying to bring this stuff together, which means we got to start also having a forgiving heart against these people. Now, whether they have it for us or not, probably won't happen. But if we can if God can work on them, then we have a chance. Or, I guess we may have to do it with laws and order. But a lot of times you don't change the heart of people, even though you change their actions. If you have to change their actions by force for them to act right, but you don't change their heart, you didn't change the person. You just put a Band-Aid on a wound. If you want the wound to heal, you got to change the heart of the person. Let's continue on, verse 3. And the spirit of Egypt shall fail in the midst thereof, and I will destroy the counsel thereof, and they shall seek to the idols, and to the charmers, and to them that have familiar spirits, and to the wizards. And the Egyptians will I give over into the hand of a cruel lord, and a fierce king shall rule over them, saith the Lord of hosts. That could have been Rome right there. As I said, they came in and surrounded Israel, then took Israel too. Let's continue on, verse 5. And the waters shall fail from the sea, and the rivers shall be wasted and dried up. And they shall turn the rivers far away, and the brooks of defense shall be emptied and dried up. The reeds and flags shall wither. If you don't know what reeds and flags are, those are the things that are normally on the side of waterway areas that are fed by the waters of a river, but they grow perfectly in that muddy soil between dry land and water. But of course, when the water is completely gone, these things die. They normally can handle a small drought, but they can't handle a complete drought. Verse 7. The paper reeds by the brooks, by the mouth of the brooks, and everything sown by the brooks shall wither, be driven away, and be no more. The fishers also shall mourn, and all they that cast angle into the brooks shall lament, and they that spread nets upon the waters shall languish. Of course, they're talking about people that fish. They're not going to get anything. There ain't going to be nothing there. Verse 9. Moreover, they that work in fine flax, and they that weave networks shall be confounded. Now that I want to explain a little bit. It's we We've went over some of this before, but not a lot. Now, remember the fine flax is part of the thing that they make the stuff into thread, and then they take the thread and make it into fabric. That's the weave networks. So it's talking about even people being able to have the stuff to make clothing with, make fabric with. You know, they're going to be troubled. They're going to be ashamed. Let's continue on verse 10. And they shall be broken in the purposes thereof, all that make sluices and ponds for fish. I didn't look up what the sluices were. But I do know part of the thing, they've been doing hatcheries for a long time. So when you take a section and you divide it out and you have water and stuff that comes into one area, they'll have this thing that they could pick up. And it's kind of like got a netting material to it. So when they got enough fish into this little pond area where they go in there, they can close it down. And so they have fresh fish. And they just go get one when they need one. And because they didn't have refrigerators, a way to keep anything. So they would keep it fresh that way. But probably that sluices part is that thing that they use to divide the main river from the man-made pond that they made, that would use as a, not really a hatchery, but it's kind of like an area to keep fish at. Let's continue on. Verse 11. 19:11. Good gun. Surely the princes of Zoan are fools. The counsel of the wise counselors of Pharaoh is become brutish. How say ye unto Pharaoh, I am the son of the wise, the son of ancient kings? Where are they? Where are thy wise men? And let them tell thee now, and let them know what the Lord of hosts hath purposed upon Egypt. The princes of Zoan are become fools. The princes of Noph are deceived. They have also seduced Egypt, even they that are the stay of the tribes thereof. The Lord hath mingled a perverse spirit in the midst thereof, and they have caused Egypt to err, and every work thereof, as a drunken man staggereth in his vomit. Neither shall there be any work for Egypt, which the head or tail, branch or rush may do. In that day shall Egypt be like unto women, and it shall be afraid and fear because of the shaking of the hand of the Lord of hosts, which he shaketh over it. Yeah, if anyone's ever had to deal with hysterical women because of something happening, you understand that clearly. That's what all the people are going to be like. Let's continue on here. 17. And the land of Judah shall be a terror unto Egypt. Every one that maketh mention thereof shall be afraid in himself, because of the counsel of the Lord of hosts, which he hath determined against it. In that day shall 5 cities in the land of Egypt speak the language of Canaan, and swear to the Lord of hosts. One shall be called the city of destruction. In that day shall there be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt, and a pillar at the border thereof to the Lord. And it shall be for a sign and for a witness unto the Lord of hosts in the land of Egypt, for they shall cry unto the Lord because of the oppressors, and he shall send them a Savior and a great one, and he shall deliver them. And the Lord shall be known to Egypt, and the Egyptians shall know the Lord in that day, and shall do sacrifice and oblation, yea, they shall vow a vow unto the Lord and perform it. And the Lord shall smite Egypt. He shall smite and heal it. And they shall return even to the Lord, and he shall be entreated of them, and shall heal them. In that day shall there be a highway out of Egypt to Assyria, and the Assyrian shall come into Egypt, and the Egyptian into Assyria, and the Egyptian shall serve with the Assyrians. In that day shall Israel be the third with Egypt, and with Assyria, even a blessing in the midst of the land. Whom the Lord of hosts shall bless, saying, Blessed be Egypt, my people, and Assyria, the work of my hands, and Israel, mine inheritance. And as you can tell from this picture, this is the end of the lesson. And we're right here at the 30-minute mark, almost at 31 minutes. So, we did 3 chapters of reading, prophecies of Isaiah. Like I said before, you don't want to be on the wrong side of God's wrath. You don't want to. Many nations have had millions starve to death because of droughts. Because of not being able to make enough food. In many ways, I wished America would just go back to being their own. But we do have, like South America produces a lot of the food for all of the world. There's many lands that can't grow their own food or grow enough for their own people, but they can do labor. China's destroying their own land with poisonous gases. They've polluted so bad their water's almost useless. Their air quality is gone in a lot of areas. So I venture to say their food is going to be tainted as all get out as well. But they are the main land of industry today for the world. It is slave labor. I don't approve of that, but if the people want freedom in China, it's like everywhere else in the world, they're going to have to fight for it. They're going to have to die for it. They're going to have to kill for it. When you don't have God running your nations, your political people or kings, queens, whomever, presidents, doesn't matter. If God's not the leader of your countries, then Satan is. And nothing good ever comes out of following Satan. So remember to pray. That's something good to pray about right there. It's not going to do much good, I fear to say, because the end times are coming. And, it's, the Bible says good will be called evil and evil will be called good. And in the end times, the people will be lovers of themselves. And we're there. Many nations, they don't care about their families no more. They don't care about each other. It's all about me, mine, mine, mine. What can I get for me? I don't care about no one else. Love thy neighbor doesn't even exist. That doesn't even exist in their brain. They don't even have that thought. A lot of them will walk by their neighbors suffering. Say, "Oh, it sucks to be you. Have a nice day," and walk right on. Won't even think about asking to help. It's happening throughout America. It's happening throughout so many countries. It's even gotten that way in Canada. It's supposed to be one of the most polite countries in the world. And that's disappearing. Mostly in the big cities. The big cities are the ones where people really just don't care about each other. We've even had some of our forefathers of America, I can't remember which one it is, but he says he detests cities because of that very nature, that cities are just, I don't know, they're just garbage. It's better for people to have homes in rural areas and homestead. Have their own stuff, or grow their own stuff, everything else. People in cities are always reliant on farmers and ranchers for food. And at least it used to be, people in cities used to be the industry areas where you had the tools made. That ain't happening no more. I don't even know what cities even produce anymore other than garbage. They produce a lot of garbage. Big time consumers, but I don't know. Anyway, like I always say, we got to pray. Got to pray for each other, pray for ourselves, pray for our families, pray for nations, pray for the lost. We got to pray. One, it keeps us in connection with the Lord, and that alone is worth it. Talk to God every day, multiple times a day. He may not talk back too much, but you will be reminded of Scripture if you have any problems. But also remember that the other commandment, I forget about this one quite a bit of mentioning, that we're to give God thanks for everything in our lives, even the bad stuff. We're to give the Lord thanks. But yeah, so until next time, God bless, good night, and goodbye.